Wonder why I always dress in black. You never see bright colors on my back. Why does my appearance seem to have a somber tone? There's a reason for the things I got on. I'll wear the black for the poor and beaten down, living in a hopeless, hungry side of town. I'll wear it for the prisoner who's long paid for his crime. He's there because he's a victim of the time. I'll wear the black for those who never read or listen to the words that Jesus said about the road to happiness through love and charity. Why you think he was talking straight to you and me? We're doing mighty fine, I do suppose, in a street good line and cars and fancy clothes. Just so we're reminded of the ones who are held back. Up front there ought to be a man in black, and I'll wear it for the sick and lonely old, for the reckless ones whose baptism left them cold. I'll wear the black in the morning for lives that could have been. Every week we lose 100 fine new men, and I'll wear it for the thousands who have died, believing that the Lord was on their side. I'll wear it for another 100,000 who have died, believing that we all were on their side. Well, there's things that never will be right, I know. Things need changing everywhere you go. Until we start to make a move, to make a few things right, you'll never see me wear that suit of white. Oh, I'd love to wear a rainbow every day, tell the world that everything's okay. I'll try to carry off little darkness on my black. Well then, I'm the man in black.
Good evening, all you Jacobites out there. I hope this Friday finds you well. I hope you're in a good seated position, because tonight may be quite a long one. It might not, depends how I rattle through it. But if Alex's electricity stays on, because there might be some slight problem with her electricity. So if it does go black on Alex's end, she hasn't decided to call it quits. It's probably that her electric has run out. So how are you, Alex? Are you well today?
Yeah, I'm not too bad. I just might have fucked up my meter, but other than that, it's fine.
Wow. Oh, they would love to
They would love to
absolutely
smart meter in, yeah.
The man with the smart meter is hovering just outside.
Yeah, probably is.
Waiting to pounce. Yeah. All right. So, have we got a few slides ready already, Alex? Is it?
Not just yet.
Not just yet. Okay, so I'll waffle on a little bit more. Let's have a look. Who's in the chat? We've got Naz. Hiya, Naz, and Janet and Lisa. We've got Claire Black, and Chris Franks. Hi to all you guys. I know many of you are long-time watchers of all our shows. Really, I try and bring a little variety. perhaps not so much this week, because this week I'm more focusing back to more earthly matters, you might say. Last week I was away with other ideas, that some people gel with and some people don't. I never claim that I've got the entire truth about anything. I like to bring you what I find interesting, sometimes informative, sometimes not. Okay. So with all that said, before I start tonight's main topic, I just thought I'd bring something else of interest to into your orbit, and I'll just talk a little bit about it. Something that will ultimately lead into tonight's topic in a kind of roundabout way. Now, you might have come across this term, or perhaps you know something about this subject already, and it's a subject called cymatics. That's cymatics, cymatics. Now, I don't know if you actually heard about anything to do with this, and it's kind of slightly spinning off of last week, because cymatics is the study of vibrational frequencies that we perceive as sound. Okay, so it's the study of sound, but not only sound, it's the study of how you can see these frequencies in the form of patterns. And if slide 1's ready, could you pop that up? We've got it. There we go. There are some cymatic patterns. And as I say, these patterns are caused when sound travels through things like fine materials like sand or salt, or even iron filings that are placed on a flat surface. And so once these grains are planted are on a flat surface and the sound is transmitted into that surface, these are the sort of patterns that form. There are a myriad of these patterns, and each change in frequency will produce a unique pattern that corresponds only to that frequency. And this can also be done with water and even liquid mercury, as we see here at slide 2. There we go. Now I want you to pay particular attention to that pattern, because this pattern seems remarkably similar to this one at slide 3, or this symbol, you might say. There we go. Can you see the similarity in that pattern? Of course, this is the symbol that was adopted to represent Judaism, but it's been around for much, much longer and used by different cultures. Ancient Buddhist monks used to use it in their meditational practices, and Muslim mystics called it the Seal of Solomon, and they believed it had supernatural powers. And even medieval alchemists used this symbol to represent the balance of opposites such as fire and water, or opposites such as male and female. And you will see that idea represented in the 2 triangles, the upward facing triangle as the male symbol, and the downward facing triangle as the female symbol. Now, its use by the Jewish faith appears firstly in the Babylonian Talmud. And in the Babylonian Talmud, it's a symbolic expression of the name of God. Now, it was kept alive. This symbol was kept alive, you might say, by Jewish mysticism, the Kabbalah, basically Jewish mysticism, and it often appears on things like protective amulets and spiritual talismans connected with Kabbalah. And Kabbalah was for a very long time known only to a few. In more recent years, it's become more known, and more people have become involved with it. But it always was, even within Judaism itself, its practice was slightly to the side of mainstream Judaism. Now, it also strangely appears, well, perhaps not so strangely, to be honest, it appears in one of the family crests of the Rothschilds family. And we can see that here at slide 4. There we are. That is just one of the many crests. It's not one they use today so much. They tend to use a more sort of armorial type crest with various insect motifs. Now, the Rothschilds actually took their name from the house of their 16th century ancestors. And their 16th century ancestors lived in the Jewish ghetto of Frankfurt. And the house of the Rothschilds was known as Zumrotenschild, which is, or shield, Zumrotenschild, which means at the sign of the red shield. Okay, so that is the origin of the name of the Rothschilds. Now, the Rothschilds, of course, are one of the main, or always have been, one of the main drivers of Zionism. So that's the kind of connection between this symbol and Zionism, how it kind of evolved into a Zionist symbol. Now, patterns and frequencies seem to have been very important to the Israelites, as we can see here at slide 5. Now, these are, well, they're not originals. These are copies of tuning forks from an ancient Hebrew practice called gematria, which associated vibrations with numbers and letters. And this particular set, the frequencies that they give off represent a set of words, which are Ehyeh, Ashta, Ehyeh. So that is the frequency at which these two tuning forks vibrate represents that phrase, and that phrase Ehyeh, Ashta, Ehyeh means I am that I am. That is the literal translation. Now, it's thought this Hebrew system was originally taken from ancient Egyptian practice, as many such things like tuning fork-looking things are depicted on tomb walls and also on statues. If we look at slide 6, we've got it there. Yeah, these are some of the tuning fork-looking mechanisms that can be seen on tomb walls, often quite complex. But So it's thought that the ancient Egyptians were somehow using sound and frequency in some way. We're not entirely sure of how they were using sound and frequency, but it appears that they were, and this very well might have been passed on into the Hebrew tradition. They might have developed it independently. Again, it's not entirely known where it came from, where this Hebrew association between frequencies and letters and words came from. Now, let's look at slide 7, please, Alex. Now, here we've got a whole variety of different things. There are some of these are patterns produced by sound, and some of them are church windows, what are called rose windows. One is the Mayan calendar, if you can spot that on the second row, second one in from the left. And one is the Large Hadron Collider at CERN, which is the fourth one in on the second row. Now, the third row down, all of these are patterns that are produced by English vowels. So A, O, E, those sounds. If you A, O, E, I, O, U, I, whatever it is, these are sounds produced by vowels, apparently. So some of them are quite sort of more rounded, like the sort of church window looking things, and others are quite, they seem quite sort of spiky, but that's what they are anyway. And the bottom one are, they're all geometric ratios, okay, again, which produce patterns. Okay. Now, this is just a subject I thought you might find interesting. And maybe if you've got the inclination, you might take a deeper look at it, because I've obviously only skimmed it here. I am that I am. Yeah, I am that I am. Bit like what Popeye used to say. I is what I is. So yeah, that was a sound. Yeah. So again, like I say, maybe something you might want to take a look at. Maybe something that you might find interesting on a wet Tuesday afternoon, perhaps, if you've got nothing better to do. Okay. So let's dive into tonight's subject, which I did kind of say was connected. Well, that connection was the Star of David, because tonight I'm going back to Israel. And tonight's broadcast was kind of inspired by an interview conducted by Tucker Carlson, which you may have seen if you're a Carlson watcher. But it was an interview with this man at slide 8, I believe, Alex, is it? Now, this, of course, is Mike Huckabee. And Huckabee is the US ambassador to Israel. And Huckabee stated during that interview that Israel has a biblical right to occupy vast parts of the Middle East. Essentially, the biblical promise made by God to the descendants of Abraham. That promise that they would inherit all the land from the Euphrates to the Nile, okay, which we can kind of see here at slide 9. And this has obviously become known as Greater Israel. So the US ambassador to Israel is basically asserting that Israel have the right to all of this land. Okay, so tonight I'm firstly going to look at this man. I'm going to look at Mike Huckabee. where did he come from, and what qualifies him sort of to be America's ambassador to Israel? What are his special qualities? So let's start by actually looking at Mike Huckabee. Now, Huckabee was born in 1955 in a place called Hope, Arkansas. His father was a mechanic, and his mother worked at a gas station, basically. She was a gas station clerk. Okay. Now, he was raised a Southern Baptist. He was raised in the Southern Baptist Church, which is an evangelical church that believes in Christian Zionism. And the roots of Christian Zionism are the re-establishment of the kingdom of Israel. And that re-establishment is a necessary condition for the return of Jesus Christ. So that is the belief of Christian Zionism. And this largely came about and was largely promoted in the late 19th century by this man here at slide 10. Okay, this is William Blackstone. He was an American evangelist preacher, and he was very much spread the idea that in order for the promised return of Jesus Christ, then Israel must be established in order to achieve that. And so he was one of a handful of very influential Christian Zionists. Okay, so back to Huckabee. So they might, that might be, what you might call his influence. His influence was the Southern Baptist Church. And Huckabee was the first male in his family to finish high school. So you can say he didn't come from, high-born origins. He came from a very ordinary family. And like I said, he was the first ever male in his family to finish high school. And that doesn't count girls, because probably girls were slightly more intelligent. I don't know. Now, after high school, he went to a Baptist university in Arkadelphia, and he gained a Bachelor of Arts degree in religious studies. Okay. He then went on to study at Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary in Fort Worth, Texas, from 1976 to 1977. But he left that seminary without gaining a degree because he wanted to, as he said, pursue ministry. So he wanted to go into the ministry. But he didn't go straight into the ministry. He worked for a while for this man at slide 11, for James Robison, who was a televangelist who was on TV at that time. And he worked for him for a short time. And then all of a sudden he became pastor of Emmanuel Baptist Church in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. And he was the minister there from 1980 to 1986. And at slide 12, we can see the church that he was the minister at. Okay, so he was there. He was the minister of that church in Arkansas, Pine Bluff, Arkansas. And then he moved to one called Beach Street First Baptist Church in Texarkana. And he stayed there from 1986 to 1982 as the pastor of that church. Now, during this time, as well as being a pastor, he also hosted a local TV show called Positive Alternatives. And in 1992, he suddenly decided he was going to run for the US Senate, but he was unsuccessful in that attempt. And so in 1993, he ran and actually won the position of Arkansas Lieutenant Governor. And that was a position he kept until 2009. After which Huckabee somehow then managed to move back into TV, and he got quite a prime spot, and he hosted a talk show on the Fox network just called Huckabee, which we can see here at slide 12. Some of you may have watched Huckabee during this time. Okay. And this show ran from 2008 to 2015. And then the show moved networks to the Trinity Broadcasting Network, where he continued that show all the way up till January 2025. So he was on air and broadcasting his kind of own style of talk show for quite a long time. He also ran a radio show called the Huckabee Report. That ran from 2009 to 2015. And you might say that Huckabee has always sought high office. And in 2000, like I say, he did try to run for Senate. He wasn't successful. He did get the the sort of lieutenant governor's job. I think that's, second in command, as it were. But then he sought the Republican presidential nomination in 2008. So basically, he ran for president, or he ran for the Republican nomination, and he did actually win Iowa and 8 other states before he dropped out. Whoops, bless you.
Excuse me.
Okay. So he won Iowa and 8 other states before he dropped out. And again in 2016, he ran and he did take some early leads, but once again, he dropped out. He dropped out in favor of Donald Trump. And Trump didn't forget that, okay? Because Trump nominated Huckabee for the role of ambassador to Israel in November 2024. And that was actually before his inauguration. So Trump had made sure that he basically paid Huckabee the debt of dropping out of the race, in his favor. And he repaid him by putting him into this position. And this was confirmed by the Senate, 53 to 46, on the 19th of April, 2025. Slide 14, please, Alex. And here he is being sworn in. There he's been sworn in. So that's a kind of potted history, you might say, of Mike Huckabee, a confirmed Christian Zionist and someone who has advocated for Israel throughout his career. He has always supported Israel. He's always been a Christian Zionist. So let's turn away from the man himself and let's have a look at his assertion, well, some of his assertions, starting with his assertion that the Jews have the right not only to inhabit modern-day Israel and operate their ethno-state, but also have the right to the full promise of land given to Abraham. Now, I've covered this before. I have covered this subject before in quite some detail. But I think it's worth going over it again a little bit, just for clarity, and in light of what the American ambassador thinks is the situation. Okay. So, after I've had a little drink, I'm going to start with Abraham. Okay. Now, according to the Bible, Abraham was born to a man named Terah, who was 130 years old at the time of his birth. And he was born in the city of Ur of the Chaldeans. Slide 15, please, Alex. And this is Ur, as it's been uncovered or partially uncovered by archaeology. So he was born in this city, which was called, in the Bible, is called Ur of the Chaldeans. And the Chaldeans were an ancient people who inhabited the southwest region of Mesopotamia. So the southwest region of modern day Iran. And this region became part of the early Babylonian Empire. So it was absorbed into Babylonia. Now, the gods that were being worshipped in Ur of the Chaldeans at the time were Nana, the moon god, who's also known as Sin. Also Enki, who was as I've talked about before, a very powerful Sumerian god. The Sumer legends are concerning Enki, but it passed down through all of that Mesopotamian lineage, and so the Babylonians were also worshipping Enki, and they were also worshipping a variety of lesser gods. Okay. Now, according to the Bible, God, well, I'm gonna put in little brackets like that. God called Abraham to leave his home and travel. He said, "Leave your land and travel to a land I will show you." Well, Abraham prevaricated a little bit, but he finally did start to leave his land when he was 70. When he was 70 years old. Slide 16, please, Alex. And here's the sort of, this is Abraham's supposed journey from Ur, following the course of the Euphrates, and then turning south towards Canaan. Okay. Now, just which God told Abraham to do this is not made clear. It's unclear which God was speaking to Abraham. It's always been assumed by biblical scholars for many centuries that this was Yahweh. This was, I am, the God Yahweh. But there's a little bit of a problem with this. Yahweh was only one of a pantheon of gods worshipped not by the Babylonians in Ur or not in Babylon at all. It was only worshipped by the Canaanites, the land to which he was traveling, Canaan. Yahweh was also worshipped alongside El and Baal and Asherah. The chief god actually being El. El was the chief god. And let's look at slide 17. And this is a statue of El. Okay. Now, it's interesting that Abraham's grandson, Jacob, eventually came to be named by God Israel, whose meaning is slightly misinterpreted as meaning one who struggles with God. but it's not quite that way. It's actually one who struggles with El, Israel. So that is the meaning of the term Israel, one who struggles with El, the chief god of the Canaanites. It's actually quite interesting that so many biblical names actually start or end with El, such as Daniel, Elijah, or the place Bethel, okay, the place of El. But let's put this into context. Let's kind of try and put this all into context. Neither Abraham nor Isaac, his son, nor Jacob were Jewish. None of them were Jewish. In fact, the religion of the Israelites, even later religion of the Israelites, bore very little resemblance at all to Judaism. And recent evidence suggests that it was actually a polytheistic religion, in that it had more than one God. Perhaps with Yahweh maybe as the head, but there were certainly other gods being worshipped. We can see Yahweh. I've used this slide before at slide 18. There's Yahweh on his winged chariot, as it were. And in this tradition, Yahweh actually had a wife as well. So there were more than one. There was more than one God. There were several gods within the Israelites' religion, what is called the religion of the Israelites. Okay. Now the Israelites had none of the practices of Judaism. None of these practices were being followed even by the time of the first temple. And there are no accounts of the Israelites refraining from things like pork or shrimp or any of the other practices associated with Judaism, such as producing graven images. Here's a graven image on a coin, which, if they had been practicing Judaism, would not have been allowed under Judaic laws. Okay. So this really puts the emergence of Judaism as the one accepted religion of the Israelites very much later than what is claimed. And even the name, as we know, even the name Jew was only attached to the people from the kingdom of Judea, a kingdom that existed from around 930 to 586 BC. So say, roughly about 360 years. So the Abrahamic promise given by some unknown God was not given to the Jews. Even the Torah, even as the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible, were being written in about the 5th century BC, during the Babylonian exile. It appears most Judeans, or people of that region, were not actually Jewish in any sense that we could recognize. Archaeological evidence seems to point to Judeans starting to follow the laws of the Torah around about the 1st century AD. So the 1st century AD is when we can first say that Judaic practices were in place. And this is a document from that time at slide 19. Which actually mentions it's the actually laws obscure laws to do with adoption, I think, or something like that. But it's based on Judaic tradition. And this document comes from the 1st century. So this part, how does this relate to Huckabee? This part of Huckabee's and every other Zionist claim that they are the inheritors of the Abrahamic land promise through the fact of being Jewish is actually built on sand, you might say. So let's put that one to one side for a minute. Let's take another of Huckabee's assertions that Jews have the right to Israel and Greater Israel because of being ethnically Jewish and therefore linked to the land of Israel. Well, right from the get-go, this is utter bullshit. It's utter nonsense. Judaism is not an ethnicity. Slide 20, please, Alex. Judaism is not an ethnicity, nor is it a race. It's not a race of people. People who identify as being Jewish are from very diverse geographical locations. But the idea put forward is that because they share a common root of their religion, that this somehow gives them the right to claim that they are descendants of Abraham and that they are a tribe or a people. They even have an actual modern Hebrew term for this, Am Yisrael, which means the nation or people of Israel. So they claim to be an ethnic group, a people, a race, but they clearly are not. Now, I'm not going to go into the long history of conversions over the centuries, such as the mainly Eastern European Ashkenazi Jews, nor the laws governing which Jews can claim the right to settle in Israel, which are defined by the 1950 law of return. No, I'm going to go into the citizenship law. All of these laws govern who can't settle, have the right to settle in Israel. All you really need to know is that very few Jews living in Israel today can claim any connection whatsoever with the area we call the Levant, that portion of the Middle East, or any genetic connection to the ancient Israelites or later Jewish populations from that area. This is probably one of the main reasons why DNA testing is not allowed in Israel, because it would prove that a lot of them have no connection. Probably the Jews that have the largest connection to this area are the Jews that live in modern day Iran. Because Iran has the second largest Jewish population outside of Israel. Okay, think about that when you want to bomb Iran, Mr. Netanyahu. You'll be bombing Jews. Now, when faced with this this line of explanation, Huckabee quickly pivoted to what has become a Zionist fallback position. And that is to claim that today's Jews are the spiritual descendants of Abraham, okay, by dint of them practicing Judaism in one of its many forms, because, as we know, there are several forms of Judaism. But this also falls flat because we know that Abraham nor the Israelites were Jewish, nor seem to have practiced any form of it, except, you might say, circumcision. Now, it's also worth noting that those who advocated for the establishment of a Jewish homeland were, for the most part, atheistic Jews, non-believing Jews, such as Theodore Herzl, who's often credited with the foundation of Zionism. He's just one of two or three, but he's the one that is always put forward. Here's Theodore Herzl. Now, Theodore Herzl was an atheistic Jew who actually at one time advocated for all Jews to convert to Christianity, but yet he was a Zionist. Okay. And he wasn't alone. Many of the other early Zionists were, in fact, atheists. All right. So on all these grounds, Israel and the Zionists have absolutely no right to claim any right to the land promised by some unknown God to a man and his descendants that cannot be proven to have existed and who weren't Jewish. Even if they did exist, they weren't Jewish or anything like it. Now, when asked, so that's kind of covered that first statement, and the subsequent statements that become fallback positions. That are, well, yes, but we are a race, we are a people, we are one people. No, you're not. You're not ethnically connected to each other at all. You're of very many different races. Judaism is a religion, not an ethnicity. Okay. Neither can you say that you are connected because of some spiritual connection to Abraham and the ancient Israelites, because you don't have that either, because they weren't Jews. Neither were they practicing the religion, if you even practice it, that Jews practice. Okay. So then we move on to another question that Huckabee was asked. He was asked about statehood, specifically what defines a state. And Huckabee said, a state which is constituted under international law and abides by international law is therefore a legal state with a right to defend itself and its borders, and the borders which define it. So let me just go through that again for clarity. A state which is constituted under international law and abides by international law is therefore a legal state with a right to defend itself and its borders which define it. Bear that in mind. So now I'm going to take this apart, okay, with respect to Israel. Well, firstly, nobody in the international community ever planned Israel in its current form. There were several partition plans for Palestine, culminating in the third one, the 1947 partition plan for Palestine, which was approved approved by the UN General Assembly in 1947. And this gave 56% of Palestine to the Jewish population. But this was thoroughly rejected by the Palestinian side, and the conflict and fighting that had been going on since about 1920 erupted once again, resulting in in what's called the first Arab-Israeli war, which the Jews won, and in 1948, having won that war, they self-declared the state of Israel. Slide 22, please, Alex. And here we can see David Ben-Gurion giving that speech, declaring Israel as a state. So they self-declared the state of Israel without international approval. Now, following this declaration, America started to lobby the UN to grant official UN statehood. And this was successful. And on May the 11th, 1949, Israel was granted statehood by the UN, but not all the states recognized it. And even today, all those years later, only 166 of the 192 member states actually recognize Israel, but that is a majority. So, but let's say, look, here is where reality clashes with Huckabee's assertions. Now, firstly, Israel agreed in 1949 to two major conditions in order to be recognized by the UN as a state. Firstly, it had to officially define its borders, which Israel never did, and still to this day has never done, which means it's in breach of its establishment conditions and should not legally be recognized as a state. Now, secondly, it agreed to be bound by the UN Charter, which we can see here at slide 23. Charter of the United Nations and Statute of the International Court of Justice. Okay, so they agreed to be bound by the UN Charter and subject to its institutions and laws. But Israel, once again, has consistently failed to do this. Now, currently, Israel is in breach of over 30 UN Security Council resolutions. You know, not the General Assembly resolutions, which are non-binding, but the Security Council resolutions, which are binding on member states of the UN. He's also in breach of the rulings of the International Court of Justice. So the two bodies that are the establishment of the UN, Israel is in breach of many, many times. These general resolutions of the Security Council are binding upon member states. And the ones that they're in breach of are many, and that they include illegally attacking their neighbors, which Israel calls defending itself. They like to say that they were attacked in 1967, which started the Six-Day War. Not quite. Israel started that war. They're also in breach by occupying the territory of other sovereign nations. They're in breach by building illegal walls and settlements, and they're in breach by committing war crimes and genocide, for which Netanyahu and former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant have international arrest warrants issued against them for. Now, Israel, as we know, has openly shown contempt for the UN, and its ambassador has even shredded the UN Charter in front of the General Assembly, which we can see him doing here at slide 24. There he is with his little portable shredder, shredding the UN Charter. Okay, so going back to Huckabee, by Huckabee's standards, Israel has failed to meet both of his conditions for qualifying as a state, that of abiding by international law and that of having defined borders which it can defend. So it hasn't defined its borders and it does not comply with international law. Now, Huckabee actually went on to defend this by saying that Israel does not have to comply with any international laws or UN Security Council mandates if it itself considers that the decisions are not in Israel's interests, and pointed to the fact that the US has withdrawn from the International Criminal Court and the International Court of Justice along with Israel. So they're saying, well, it's all right for them. It's good enough for them. It's good enough for us. We don't have to abide by their rules. We don't have to abide by their judgments. We don't have to take any notice of the UN whatsoever. Okay. But this is a fundamental condition of being a UN member. So why are both America and Israel still allowed to be members, you should ask? Beats me. Why is Israel still allowed to be a member of the UN? It's in breach of, like say, over 30 Security Council resolutions. It takes no notice of the legal framework of the UN. It doesn't listen to the International Court. It doesn't listen to the International Criminal Court nor the International Court of Justice. Both of these institutions are foundational to the UN, and all member states agree to be bound by their rulings as a condition of membership, as is, like I said, the agreement made that all states must define their borders, and Israel never has. So they're in breach of their foundational conditions, if you want to be pedantic, which I do. Okay. Now, lastly, I'll turn to his comments on the casualty figures. This was talked of for some time. The casualty figures and the conduct of the Gazan genocide, which he obviously describes as a war that was started by Hamas on October the 7th. Now, Huckabee declared that civilian casualties in Gaza were some of the lowest ever recorded in recent wars, and specifically the fact that Israel does not target women and children. And he cited Syria as an example, saying the rate of civilians killed in the Syrian conflict was much higher than Gaza. Now, this was either an outright lie, or he was misrepresenting the facts. As statistics from Syria show that there was a 2% civilian casualty rate, and this casualty rate occurred over a 13-year period. So in 13 years, 2% of there was a 2% civilian casualty rate in total. Now in Gaza, 5% is conservatively the figure for the 2-year so-called war. So his figures were wrong, or he was misrepresenting. Slide 5, please, Alex. Slide 25, sorry. Sorry, okay. So taking figures for women and children, this is women and children alone, death rates in Gaza amount to 46% of overall deaths, which is way ahead of many conflicts. Yemen, 25% of those killed were women and children. In Colombia, 21.6%. Kosovo, 20%. Syria, 20%. Northern Ireland, just throw that one in, 15.7%. All right. Now, he specifically cited Afghanistan, saying civilian deaths were lower in Gaza. Now, if you take his estimate of 60,000 deaths, which is pretty damn low, but that's what the Israelis say, 60,000 deaths, and then you compare this to official UN figures for Afghanistan, which is an estimate actually of 432,000 civilians killed. You've got to bear in mind that this figure is for a conflict that ran from 2001 to 2023. And I believe that figure to be incorrect, because if you look at this period, slide 26, please, Alex. Here are the numbers between 2012 and 2022, okay, which show an average. If you kind of drew an average line across there, it's around about 3,000 people killed per year for that 11-year period. And here's slide 27. It's a slightly different source. This is the estimates from 2001 through to 2009. Okay. So I can't really see how they ended up with this figure of 432,000, because if you add all the sort of yearly death rates, if you average the whole lot out at 3,000 a year, that's still nowhere near that figure. So I'm unsure of where this figure comes from. Now, even the Gazan Health Authority says that 67,075 people were killed, and some estimates, as we know, are a lot higher. So for a 2-year conflict, that's an average of 33,537.5 deaths per year, which makes Afghanistan look like a walk in the park. Although the average number of deaths, although the total number of deaths over a 21-year period is higher, the per year figure never reaches anything like the figures achieved in Gaza, which is, like I said, 37.5 deaths per year. That actually makes it a figure far higher than any modern war. In terms of percentage of Gazans' civilian population killed, the only thing that you can compare it to, the only thing you really point to that comes anywhere near the death rate are the figures from World War II. And let's look at slide 28. So remember that figure of 5% of civilians killed. You've got to get up into the realms of the actual combatant countries like Germany and Yugoslavia and Soviet Union to reach anywhere near figures that are bigger in percentage terms than the death rate in Gaza. Okay. So to reach Gazan figures in 2 years, it's clear that Israel was targeting civilians, and that is the point. And this is obviously, this is just figures. This is setting aside all the reports of this by doctors and hospitals and it's setting all of that aside. Now, when we're talking about doctors and hospitals, on that point, Huckabee repeated, he basically repeated Zionist propaganda on this score, stating that doctors were Hamas, that arms caches and tunnels were under hospitals, that there were tunnels and arms caches under schools, that children were Hamas, that Hamas's fighters, some of them were as young as 14 years old, and that Gazan schools taught nothing but hatred and skills for killing Israelis. That was the point he was saying. He also repeated the point that Hamas deliberately hid behind civilians. When asked specifically about the 232 journalists killed in Gaza, slide 29, please, Alex. When he was asked about the 232 journalists that have been killed in Gaza, he once again repeated the Israeli line that most of them were Hamas. And Tucker asked him, what, even the ones working for international news agencies? Yes, they were Hamas or had Hamas sympathies, said Huckabee. Now, I could go on and on and on, because in conclusion, it's clear, it's crystal clear, it could not be any clearer, that the US ambassador to Israel is a complete Zionist, totally serving the state of Israel in everything he says and everything he does. He is Israel's man. Slide 30, please, Alex. And here he is. A man who denies Israel committed genocide in Gaza, even though every single humanitarian body and all the world's leading genocide scholars, most of them Israeli, by the way, say is the case. Here is a man who believes Israel has the God-given right to take other people's land. A man who, when confronted with the fact that 70% of Americans don't want a war with Iran, replied by basically saying the American public don't get to choose. We're a republic, he said, not a democracy. So that's the contempt he holds you in if you're American. A man who said Iran is a direct threat to America and the world axis of evil. Now, if you listen to Mike Huckabee, you might as well be listening to Netanyahu himself. There is no difference. There is no difference in what they say. So I ask you tonight, especially if you're watching from America, I ask you, is this man representing America or Israel? Or at this point, is there absolutely no difference? Now, I hate Zionism. I hate Zionism in all its forms. But the very worst form is Christian Zionists who are egging Israel on because they want to bring about Armageddon. Well, keep going, because that looks like what America's policy and Israeli policy seems to be doing as well. It seems to me that that's what they want to do, because American policy at this stage is Israeli policy and is it's demonstrated so clearly by this man. He might be the US ambassador to Israel, but he does not represent the United States. In all respects, he is Israel's good servant. And that is why I called tonight's show The Good Servant, because in all respects, Mike Huckabee is that man. Okay, so that was my look at Mike Huckabee, who I find repugnant. Look,
Sorry.
oops, okay.
Oh, God. Meant to move the slides, not you.
All right. I don't think I had any slides left. Hopefully, unless
No,
I
you
missed.
didn't.
Oh, that's all right. That took slightly less time than I thought it would take to deliver that, which leads us obviously a little bit more time to discuss maybe this, maybe other things, maybe Iran, maybe the whole world situation, whatever you would like to discuss. But in respect to Mike Huckabee, he's obviously being appointed in that, as far as I can see, has been appointed that by Trump to that position as a kind of thank you for carrying these states with him who voted for him, and then dropping out and letting them pass to Trump. And this was his reward. And perhaps, well, the American administration is stuffed with Christian Zionists, stuffed with Zionists. And there is no, there isn't even any distinction between left and right, because the Democrats are just the same. So it's unsurprising that we end up with a rabid Christian Zionist in this position. I don't know, but he does seem to me to display a contempt for the American people and their opinions when he says, well, we're not a democracy, are we? We're a republic. So sit down, children, and let the grown-ups talk. Paraphrasing, but that's what
Grown-ups.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know what do you know much about this man? Have you paid any attention to him? And I've seen him.
Not really. No.
Yeah.
Beyond what you've said today, it's not somebody I've really paid.
Not figured on your radar.
No, but he's probably somebody that would get the clothes thing as soon as he started talking, because I have little tolerance for that sort of nonsense. But
he was an active TV personality, and he did do a lot of shows. Huckabee ran for years, and I must admit I have tuned in when my opinions were slightly different. I tuned into a lot of people. I used to watch Dan Bongino and people like that, but I don't anymore because I find them to be liars. But yeah, I have watched Huckabee on occasions, and he comes across as this kind of gentle pastoral figure, with all of the time having this maniacal Christian Zionist in the background. Yeah. I don't know.
He seems to, like all of them now, though, he seems to have parted company with any form of truth. Because to just pull out, just say the figures are lower than places when they're seriously not. It's like the usual one you get. Well, how can the population grow? For one, that story's been going around for 3 years now. So we're talking about we're not talking about the population in 2026. We're talking about the population in 2024. 2, do I really need to tell you where babies come from? 3, it says in Palestine, it's probably including half the illegal settlers as well. Yeah. And 4, it's, like I say, do I need to tell you where babies can come from? More babies can be born. Doesn't just mean that the population is going down, because babies will be born as well as people will die. And then the way it goes on, very shortly after, some of those babies will die because there be Hamas fighters, in this fuckwit's opinion, by the sounds of it.
Oh, entirely, Alex. He thinks children are Hamas, or were Hamas, continue to be Hamas fighters. That they had to bomb the schools because they were basically hubs for Hamas indoctrination and hatred. So
That'd be Israel.
that'll be Israel. Yeah, exactly. Who actually do, and I've demonstrated this, take their children to camps where they teach them how to shoot and get indoctrinated into Zionist groups and camps, and end up in Hilltop Youth, who are the very worst offenders for settler violence, and they're teenagers. They are an abominable sort of group who are the vanguard of settler takeover, and I've talked about them in the past that when I was talking about Israel's far right.
Yeah.
So everything it's like holding up a mirror. Everything Huckabee says about everything Israel says about the Gazans, about Hamas, is just a reflection of how they are themselves. And I watched this whole interview, and which had to be done under very strange conditions, and there were people. Well, part of Carlson's crew they weren't allowed to leave. They all had to go through these interrogations about their whole organization. There were some very strange things. Originally, he wanted to conduct the interview in the American embassy, but the American embassy said, which is normal diplomatic practice, it would not offer Tucker any security in order to get from the airport to the embassy. And eventually they said, no, we don't want it holding here in the embassy. And it ended up being held in the diplomatic lounge of Ben Gurion Airport. And Tucker did say it's the worst airport he's ever visited. It's falling apart. But by the by. But yeah, so it was held under very strange conditions. And Netanyahu's actually is threatened Carlson anyway. He's called him anti-Semitic, but then everybody's anti-Semitic. Yeah. He has, he's openly threatened Carlson, who I must admit, I like Carlson's interviews. I liked his interview with Vladimir Putin, although sometimes he does seem to act like some kind of giggly schoolboy. He's a little bit like that, with his funny laugh and everything, and the fact that he's very averse to I don't like the fact he's very averse to criticizing Trump. He'll criticize the policies. He'll criticize the the sort of system and everything, but he's very averse to criticizing Trump, because I think he was quite he was in that kind of right-wing camp for most of his time on Fox and everything. So I think he's brought that with him. But when it came to Mike Huckabee, I thought he did put a lot of pressure on him. He wanted to know, like when he was talking about what defines a state, what defines the state of Israel, and Huckabee went into this whole spiel about, well, anything is a state that abides by international law and that is constituted under international law, follows international law. And I thought, well, how can you claim that?
Israel aren't then.
It's not a fucking
America aren't. Israel isn't and America isn't, because neither of them follow international law.
No. But that
reached it.
That's gone. We are now living in a post-international law world. That pretense has gone. And Israel showed the world, to be honest. As far as I'm concerned, it was a beacon of showing the world you can do anything you like. none of these laws matter. They're all just piles of dry paper that nobody has to take any notice of. And all of your institutions and all your bodies, you can shove them all up your arse. We'll do what we like, and you can't stop us. And that's why I'm utterly dumbfounded that they still have a seat in that body, which they hold in contempt, as far as I can see. I really don't know what's keeping them there. Well, apart from America.
And the rest of the West.
Yeah,
if I could have said once before, if America ever didn't veto it, we would pick up the veto.
Yeah, we probably would. Yeah, we're the next lackey in line.
The next, yeah.
We're kind of minor lackey at the minute because it's got its major lickspittle to rely on. And again, the other thing, I don't know if I've just gone over this ground. I went in detail about this. The whole Abrahamic covenant thing, the whole idea that the inhabitants of Israel can somehow be conflated with this inheritance, this mystery God who isn't defined, who was later assigned. Even the Jews actually changed Yahweh later on. They changed the name Yahweh to Elohim. Again, Elohim. So as far as I can see, the ancient Israelites were worshipping El, I think, a Canaanite god. And I think we might have confused that somehow and assigned this other slightly minor god, Yahweh, who was in the same sort of ranking as Baal and was it Ashkara? They were the lower orders of gods, but somehow Yahwehism rose to the top and all the others seem to be suppressed. But there is no evidence there's no real material evidence whatsoever until you get to about the first century AD, that Judaism was being practiced. The laws of the Torah were even the laws of the Talmud were even being practiced in any widespread way. This Israelite religion still clung on for a long time before it was eventually supplanted by what we now consider to be Judaism. So I can't see how in any way you can say that Judaism represents a line of lineage back to a promise made to someone who wasn't a Jew and who held none of the Jewish laws, and who we actually don't know existed anyway. There is no physical evidence for Abraham's existence, which probably there shouldn't be, because I mean we're talking about almost 1900 BC when you look at the time of supposed time of Abraham. But no, but again and again Huckabee adopts a fallback position. When that fallback position is, when that sort of thing is put to him, he falls back to the position of, but we have an ethnic right to it because we are a people and we need a land, and a people come from a land, don't they? You're ethnically African and therefore you can be ethnically Jewish. No, you fucking can't. You cannot be ethnically Jewish. It's a religion. You can't be ethnically Christian or ethnically Muslim or ethnically any religion. And you can't convert to one ethnicity. I can't tomorrow decide to
convert to an ethnicity. Well, I try to, but you can't convert to an ethnicity.
No, just as you can't decide that you're a dog. It just isn't possible. And then again, you see the fallback position after that one, which is, we do have a word. Well, we have a word for it. Am Israel, which means the people of Israel. So we are one people. No, not really, because even the Jews are not a united people. They've got many sects. They've got different people practice completely different things within the religion, and you're not a people. You can't be defined as a people. And so he falls back again and says, well, we are the spiritual inheritors. We are the Jews are the spiritual inheritors of the Abrahamic promise. In what sense? In what sense are you spiritually connected to people who worshipped half a dozen gods, in the Neolithic era? How are you spiritually connected to them in any way whatsoever? Your religion was derived and mostly written by people in exile in Babylon, and partially written again by people who were in exile in Nazareth. In the case of the what's called the Palestinian Torah, but which Jews will never call the Palestinian Torah. But anyway,
classic.
So there is no connection of these people.
No.
The people who do have a connection, and this has been genetically proven for thousands of years, the people who we call the Palestinians have lived in the Levant, and they are probably the descendants of the Israelites who were converted to Islam by successive waves of Muslim invasion. So they probably represent the gene pool of the people who are indigenous to that land, and also perhaps the Jews who fled to Babylonia, to Iran, what is now Iran, but never returned, who basically set up their own new life never came back during the Second Temple period. Or prior to the building of the Second Temple. They never came back. They stayed there. So they're probably more purely ethnically attached to the Levant than almost every other person who lives in Israel, who are mostly European converts. There you go. It's a long wind. You really have to get long-winded when you talk about this shit. You really do, and it winds me up.
It's just the whole.
You can be a clan, Kenny. You can be a clan, because a clan doesn't necessarily. Now, old clans were of the same blood. Clans were related, such as
added to, though. You could be accepted into and be of a different family or a different blood.
Yeah, you could be adopted. You could be adopted by that clan. You could, so like not everybody who shares my name, or even if I know my ancestors, were actually descended, from the Bruce clan. They could have just been adopted, or anybody from any clan, are not necessarily related by blood, but clans are different. Sort of, yeah. That's the way you can think about it. And neither do we claim that I don't know. Although we have claimed, I'm getting misled, because we have claimed that England owns all that land, and Scotland could claim that it owns a lot more, all the way down to Newcastle or whatever, by dint of conquest or whatever you might say, which is essentially how Israel has gained its land, by conquest, right from day one. If you connect the biblical Israelites and their conquest of all the tribes around them, and then you transcribe that onto Israel's modern day conquests.
Yeah, they don't, though. They could claim it via conquest, but they don't. And the reason they don't, and is the same reason they won't define their borders, because they don't want what they've got. They want Greater Israel.
They want more.
They want more. And if they claim by conquest, they can only claim what they occupy. They can't claim the whole of Greater Israel. That's why they have to have this. And it's when people literally believe it and they literally quote the propaganda straight at you, and you think, well, nowadays I think usually I'm straight for the start typing before I think, but nowadays I start thinking, is it worth it? Am I going to get you to even?
No.
Have you even got the capability to accept the concept that you're repeating propaganda?
Yeah.
And they don't, and most
No,
people don't.
no.
I cannot understand Christian Zionism.
No.
It has
Oh,
no
yeah,
logical
worse.
sense.
You can understand Israelis spouting this because they are taught this from right from an early age at school. They are taught all of this. They are taught about their exceptionalism, their right to occupy the land, and so you can understand if it was coming from an Israeli, but if it's not coming from an Israeli, then you're really talking to someone who has accepted someone else's concept and tried to graft it onto their own. Christian Zionism is a crazy idea. It's a mad idea based on the fact that, well, we need to establish Israel. We need that to happen. This is the idea. Because if that happens, then Jesus will come back, then Armageddon will happen, and then we'll all go to heaven. And that is the premise, the basic premise of Christian Zionism. So it doesn't matter what has to happen. Millions upon millions upon millions upon millions of people could die. Well, that really doesn't matter because Armageddon's coming. So what does it matter? We have to get there somehow. And that's the fucking stupid idea that Christian Zionism is premised upon.
The problem is, it's not what most of the people that spout it believe, though. What most of the people that spout it believe is, oh, I recognize that name. I read it in the Bible. They must be the good guys. And I'm sorry, but that is the limit of the knowledge and the limit of the understanding of the average Christian Zionist.
Yes.
They wouldn't say that. They wouldn't think, but this is how it works in their life.
Yes.
I've read the name Israel. I've read these places. That's the Holy Land. Therefore, I must support them.
Yeah.
And that seems to be the limit of that really does seem to be the basis of it.
It's an enclosed it's an enclosed bubble of pseudo-religious thought.
Yeah.
That's how I see it. That cannot be broken because it says this in the Bible. Well, no. You don't have to take the Bible apart. You don't have to examine it. You don't have to look into what the meanings are. You just take it as word. That is the word of God. Which God? God. God. The God. Which God are you talking about? God. So which God are we talking about? Which God did the Israelites worship? Which God did Abraham worship? When, as far as I can see, it was a Canaanite god who was adopted. Even if that might, and they even went on to change it. It was sort of Yahweh, but the writers of the Talmud changed it to Elohim, which was the chief Canaanite god. So they even seem to be admitting it. Oh, well, this is what we actually meant when we talk about God. We're talking about Elohim, the major Canaanite deity. So it doesn't sit. It doesn't sit with me. It doesn't sit right. I mean, and that to me is why the Bible was when it was rewritten for a European audience, the word was taken out and replaced with either God or the Lord. It was a kind of an amorphous term for this deity that controls everything. Now, I'm not saying there isn't a deity that controls everything, or which bloody name you should assign to that deity, or if you should even assign a name to this deity, or whether it's male or fucking female. I do not know. I think these concepts are they're bigger than just that. But it's far too. There's far too much transcription of Old Testament ideas that have been interpreted I believe have been interpreted down the centuries wrongly. We're starting to see more and more of this being questioned and then put against archaeological evidence. Now, there is a lot of archaeological evidence that supports places named in the Bible to have been real places, such as the Ur of the Chaldeans, as the Bible calls it. That was a real place.
Yeah.
So perhaps this man did come from Ur of the Chaldeans, the son of a 130-year-old man, and who never even set out on his journey until he was 70. I don't know. Is that the kind of journey you want to drag your family on when you're 70? But biblical, once again, we have to get this thing into our minds that biblical lifespans were different.
Yeah.
When there's, why were biblical lifespans different only a few thousand years ago? You could argue for the whole kind of, you could go down different routes that we have gone down, but you're just expected to accept it. All right. Where can we go now?
I don't know if you want that comment, because I'm not.
I reckon Iran and Israel are together. At the end of the day, doesn't Shia Islam started by a Jew? True story. Check it out. Why US Han? Now. Well, yeah, that now, strangely enough, that's something I'd like to know more about. I'd like to know more. Weren't we having this conversation only the other day, Jackie? Mm-hmm. That we need to know more about Shia Islam.
Yeah.
So, in respect to that, I'm gonna bow to your probably greater knowledge, because I'm not exactly sure on that, and that's something I'd like to learn more about. I know the premise of how the division occurred, about the conflict between who should inherit Muhammad's sort of authority, whether it should be his his son-in-law, or whether it should be the imams that were taught by Muhammad himself. That seems to be that was the dividing point. So whether or not that had anything to do with someone who was Jewish, I couldn't say. I'd like to know a bit more. But there are only, there's so many things you can investigate and so many things you can't.
Yeah, I don't know anything on that one. That's why I put it up.
That's what.
The second half says, why did the US hand over Iraq to Iran? But I have no recollection of the US ever handing over Iraq to Iran. I recall the US backing Iraq in the Iran-Iraq war.
Yeah.
And then turning their back on them in the actual Iraq war. You never want to be America's ally, but I don't recall the US ever handing over Iraq to Iran.
No, I don't. I know that the British controlled Iran for quite a while. We were a colonial power in what is modern day Iran. But no, when it comes to the Iran-Iraq war, I don't get the premise of that. Who's that? Naz. That's why I reckon.
Naz.
Oh no, that's different one. Different comment.
No, it's still the same comment. It's the second half of Naz's.
Naz says, I was just throwing a bone, hoping you'd take it on. Your knowledge is more on point. Yeah, I say, Naz, that is something I would like to know more about. I'd like to know more about if there was any other involvement in this schism that occurred after Muhammad's death. It seems to, as far as I was aware, it was a purely Islamic schism based on the fact of who was supposed to be, carrying on, picking up the mantle, you might say, picking up the leadership role. So I'd like to know if there was any Jewish people involved in it. Well, let's face it. I mean,
this one I would have to debate against, because I'm pretty sure the Catholic Church didn't exist when. I'm pretty sure the church was after, was it not?
By Islam. I see no. I've not seen any evidence for that whatsoever.
I think Islam precedes the Catholic Church, is what I'm saying.
What was that? Oh, hang on. Here we go. No, Iran was not directly given to Iran in a formal transfer of territory or sovereignty following the 2003-led US invasion and the removal of Saddam Hussein. However, Iran gained immense political, economic, and military influence over Iraq turning its former adversary into a close yet often strange strategic ally. Yeah, that was an answer my wife found. So
that's AI to me.
Yeah, it is AI. Yeah. It is AI.
AI never. Have you noticed with AI in Google, when you Google, you can't get away from it. I'm not saying you can. It always comes up first on Google. But if you noticed, it never denies anything. It never actually denies anything. It says, no, there's no direct evidence of this, but you might be thinking of, and it comes up with some whole thing as why, in case it's missed something. It doesn't want to admit it doesn't know.
Wrong or doesn't know. Yeah,
I'm attributing motives.
Yeah, no, you are absolutely right.
It does definitely do that.
Hang on, she's got something else. What's that? Iraq eventually became part of Buyid Iran as the Buyid Emirate of Baghdad. Right, I see. There was a point in history when part of Iran was controlled by Iraq. Part of Iraq was controlled by Iran, as the Buyid Emirate of Baghdad. After the Seljuk invasion, the Abbasid Caliphate retained a degree of independence. Yeah,
these two countries, caliphates, that's not the US doing anything. That's prior to US existence.
I think the thing is that it's very easy to think of modern countries and try to superimpose them over what was before, because borders are defined at various, take a lot of the Middle East, whose borders were defined fairly late, in the 20th century even. And some countries were created out of others, such as Kuwait, which was basically created out of Iraq by the British in order to claim that that bit's ours, and all the oil that's there, that's ours as well. I think that was sometime during or just after the First World War. So countries are quite often have fluid borders and change names. I mean, Iran used to be Persia. That whole area was Persia at one point, and empires have come and gone. And at some stage, what you might think as one country was actually part of another before it gained its independence. And there's all sorts of things. But I think what we need to try to do, much like what we need to try to do with Israel, is to separate it from its past or its supposed past. We need to look at the modern state of Israel in terms of its establishment from 1948 or 49 in reality. That is the entity we're dealing with. We're not dealing with the entity that has anything to do with the ancient Israelites, nor the Judeans, nor any of the other kingdoms that were supplanted on top of those kingdoms. I mean, God knows everybody's ruled the Levant at one point or another. You know, the Assyrians, the bloody Babylonians, the Romans. Everybody's owned that land. Everybody's been on that land. Everybody's conquered that land. Everybody's influenced the names of that land. You know, all the way through until you get to even, you know, the British imposing conditions and imposing borders on that land and creating areas. So that's gone on forever. And that's why I think we shouldn't just pick some ancient point in history for which there's very little proof and say, well, because of this, then that means that this can exist and these people have this right through no connection whatsoever. Yeah. I find that wrong. It's very wrong to do that, because otherwise, if you were then to take that model, you could then say, well, yeah, but for a very long time, quite large parts of England were held by the Danish, the Danehold. Even where I live is part of what used to be the Danehold. That it was a Nordic, division where the king of various kingdoms of England held various territories, and the Danes held a big swathe of eastern England. But you wouldn't expect the Danes to come knocking on the door and say, oh, by the way, we used to own this, or at least what we say are our distant ancestors used to own this. So therefore we want it back and we're going to fight you for it. And that would be made even worse if these Danish people were actually descendants of Danish people who now lived in Africa. In the same
But the spiritual descendants of
we are the spiritual. Yes, exactly. Bang. Yeah, you've got it. Yeah. That is the situation. That this is the nonsense that is spouted about this crap. I must admit, I'm quite surprised. Well, surprised and relieved at the moment that we haven't got to the point where America has attacked Iran. I think there are a lot of factors that have come into play now with this. There's an awful lot of stuff going on in the background. I think the basic idea is still on the table. Israel still wants America to attack Iran. But I'm just sensing there are other factors at play. That's, well, not least of which is the American public's complete resistance to the idea. I in a lot of ways, I think that Israel considers that this is its last chance to get this done, because I can't see future. Although I find it hard to believe that the allegiance that the American political system has to Israel will change. I going forward beyond the Trump administration, I can't see that there would be the willingness as much as there is now. Israel knows that the time is now, that if they don't get this done now, they might have to wait quite a long time to try again, by which time Iran will have become a much even stronger country than it is now. So I think there's an air of desperation amongst in the Israeli camp almost. I don't know how you feel about that.
It's a desperation, full stop, because there's a desperation in the Netanyahu camp, because the minute the war stops,
Yeah.
he's going down. He can't
The
afford
war's
the war to
coming
stop.
on.
And they've always all got, and to me, it's a warped and fucked eye on their legacy. But they do all have that eye on their legacy. So it's
Simple stuff now, I think.
There's a desperation, but I don't know if it's purely on Israel's side, if it's purely on Netanyahu's side, if it's purely on Trump's side or America's side. America have wanted Iran. America have wanted to shot Iran for decades.
Yeah, president after president.
A fortnight away from these nuclear weapons since about the 90s.
Oh, God, yeah. I would say that probably Iran's probably the most nuclearly inspected country on earth. No other country has subjected itself to the inspection regimes that Iran has had foisted on it, basically by America and Israel.
And it's a total hypocrisy, because Israel is not supposed to have nukes either. And everybody, the entire world, knows it's the worst kept secret in the world.
It's not even a secret now.
It's not.
They openly admit it, yeah. And we know
they're still not supposed to have legally.
No, they're not legally.
Theirs.
And they've never allowed inspections, and they've never signed up to any treaties. They never signed the nuclear proliferation treaty. They've never signed that, nor any of the strategic arms limitations treaties. They've never gone into any of that. And this actually comes full circle back to Huckabee, because the first question Tucker asked him on that interview was why he invited the guy who actually stole huge amounts of America's secrets, nuclear secrets, and then passed them to Israel, and then Israel passed them to Russia. Why he was in prison for 30 years? I can't remember his name. Jonathan somebody. Somebody in the chat might remember what that guy's name is. He's a very, very famous traitor. He spent 30 years in jail, and then whilst he was in jail, Huckabee was advocating for his release. He was a big champion, or you might see it there, Alex. I can't remember what the guy's name was. He's certainly a kind of famous, what you might call traitor, who stole American secrets. The first question was, why did you sort of invite him to the embassy and sort of start palling around with this guy? And he wriggled a lot on that hook. He was, I only ever met him twice. I didn't really, know much about him or anything like that. But yet he was the one advocating for his release, which eventually came. And as soon as he released, he went to Israel. Have you got it there? No? Have you got it, Jackie?
I'm looking.
What was the name of it?
Aldrich Ames, Robert Hansen.
Robert Hansen. I think it was Robert Hansen. I think that was the guy. That rings a bell, or I might be wrong, but I think it might be that. It might be that guy. But yeah, so that was one of the questions. But again, as we've seen with Maxwell, as we saw when we were talking about the whole Octopus files, when we were talking about all of that, all of what everything ends up in Israel. Everything seems to end up there, including the nuclear material with which Israel started its atomic program. That was stolen from America. Everything seems to end up in Israel. All the pedophiles flee to Israel. All these sort of traitors flee to Israel. And Israel, as a record of passing information that it has been given on to what you would consider America's enemies. So I don't know in what way you can claim that this special relationship is based on anything else but bribing congressmen, bribing senators, and blackmailing people. That seems to be the hold that they have. They certainly, to me, I don't see there's any great. There's nothing. There don't seem to be anything much in it for America to support Israel in all these wars, apart from the fact that a lot of the countries they attack have got lots of lovely oil. They seem to benefit that way, perhaps. But then Huckabee himself on that program was based. But Tucker asked him, "How do you think if America attacks Iran? How do you think this will impact the rest? Will impact the world, and how specifically do you think it will impact America?" And Huckabee shrugged and said, "It won't impact America. We're energy independent. We don't have to worry about that. Not giving a fuck about the rest of us, you know.
No.
Close the Straits of Hormuz, and you know, you go to the petrol pump within a few days and see how much you're paying for petrol or gas." And then eventually see if you can actually get any. You won't be going anywhere because everything will be shut down. Anyway, you won't be able to go to work. so
I might.
It's got. Well, you will, yeah. But
I might have any orders because nobody will have any money to place any. But
and the couriers won't be delivering anything.
No,
they might have any fuel.
Which they're not doing anyway. But
yeah, that's entirely their fault. You can't blame that on Iran.
They probably will if they could.
Oh, well, could, yeah.
Probably Russia.
We are just in where the world feels to me like, well, this whole situation feels like we're lost in the fucking jungle. We are lost in this jungle, and we're not entirely sure how we even got there. I think it just. I don't know. We're in a very strange limbo at the minute. We're neither at war, neither are we not at war.
Yeah.
We are acting almost as if we're at war. We're pushing for a war. We're trying to provoke a war. It's that phony war situation that we're in, where there's a lot of saber rattling, a lot of tension. A lot of people pointing fingers, a lot of people making stupid accusations, like, I don't know, like the American press, you know, deciding that half a fucking billion people were killed on the streets of Iran during the protest. So whatever stupid figure it was, I think the latest figure the New York Times put out was actually a bigger figure than everyone who's been killed in Gaza in 2 days, which is incredible bullshit, you know, but people soak this up.
Yeah.
But I think that's the stage we're in. We're in this intense propaganda war, this you know, this build up.
The Kuwaiti ambassador's daughter stage.
Exactly, yeah. Lies, more lies.
Yeah.
And damn lies, yeah. Hey ho, there we go. But in terms of this man, this odious toad, Huckabee, he's got the right job, because I feel that you know, he's as far up Netanyahu's rear passage as it's possible to get. You know, if it wasn't for the fact that he's, you know what shoes he's wearing, you wouldn't know what was up there. I think that's the situation we're in. He is Israel's loyal man. You know which side you come down on, and you know, in a way, that he is only a reflection of the overall political class in America. They are mostly all on that page, as well as the media, or a large chunk of the media seem to be, especially the right-wing media. So yeah, it's only really, to me, it's only the American public that are waking up to this, they're saying, no, this is not in my name. This is not something I want. This is not, how is this going to benefit me? You know, I'd like actual help with paying my bills. You know, I'd like things not to be so fucking expensive. I'd like things to work. You know, lots of issues to do with America, which, as far as I can see, is the ticket that Trump rode into town on. He rode into town on this ticket of making America great again, making America. I remember no more wars. That was the thing he said. No more wars. I'm going to stop all the wars. I'm going to stop the. I'm going to stop the Ukraine war tomorrow. It'll take me about a day to do it. I'm going to do all that, and I'm going to do none of the things that he came into office promising. Has he even begun to approach? I think we've seen a complete change. Well, not a change. I think that was probably, he is what he always was. He was just good at pretending to be something else. There you go. Not that I'm any great fan. That by-election we were talking about, I think Ian was talking about that by-election, was actually won by the Greens.
Yeah.
I think that it's, for me, Greens or Reform, it's frying pan or fire. They both got their bad points. They both got their rather weird policies. So I mean, I wouldn't vote for either of them, but people do. So there you go.
No, I don't really. It's not a good thing, and it's not a Reform win, so I don't know really what to go on that.
There
It just shows where we are.
There is no right path. There is no
political answer, basically.
No, they're all. Yeah. I was quite interested. I watched it was only a short piece somebody sent me today about the EU are going to start, or the Commission are proposing to set up this body for what they call shielding democracy.
Yeah.
Have you seen that? Yeah. And it for me, everything that there was a guy talking about it, and everything, you could see the Commission's thinking in all of that. Well, it worked in Romania, didn't it? We got rid of that pesky election, didn't we? We got our people in there. We made sure that the opposition, or these people who were going to win, couldn't win, or couldn't even run. So don't you think that would be a good idea for the rest of Europe? And we'll call it, I don't know, shielding democracy. Yeah, shielding people from democracy.
Yeah. It's funny, when you were saying two of the comments actually, your last, I wasn't going to make you pull them out again because I couldn't remember exactly the wording, but two of your comments you made when you were talking, it only needed one little movement or one insertion of a comma to make it accurate. And it was along those same lines. It was the fact that it was a bit about the axis of evil. He said they're such and such against I don't know, but it was something about them being such and such against America, and they're such and such against
direct threat to America.
Evil or something. But if you'd put the comma in a different place, it would have suddenly become accurate. Yeah.
So that America was a direct threat in the axis of evil. Yeah, as in, probably the truth. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, there are so many wheels in motion right now. It's very hard to know where to look and what to focus on, and even to discern what the truth is about a lot of things, because we're swimming in a sea of propaganda, bullshit, lies, and it's, you have to keep your head on, screwed on, and look analytically at these things.
Yeah.
And pull them apart and say, well, what is the real truth, and who gains? Key bono, whatever. Who's going to gain out of this? Why am I seeing this? Who's going to gain? So I think that's a lot to do with it. There you go. I'm waffling now.
I have to admit, when I look at Israel, I don't have that problem with defining the truth. When I look at Iran, and I'm not saying the Iranian regime is perfect by a long way,
No,
but I don't have the problem recognizing all the hallmarks of a Western infiltrated colour revolution attempt. I don't have the problem recognizing the equivalent of the Kuwaiti ambassador's daughter. Where I start struggling is when I start looking at things like Afghanistan and Pakistan now, and before that, what went down with Syria. That's where I start struggling, because it's like, I mean, take Afghanistan and Pakistan. You've got the Pakistan-India side of it. You've got this suddenly kicking off when Modi's in Israel.
yeah,
You've got India and Afghanistan, but then you've got Israel and Afghanistan. And you've got all completely different attitudes and relationships, even from ally to ally to enemy to ally to enemy to enemy. That's where I struggle following.
It's a hot mess. That's why. You've got Pakistan attacking Afghanistan because it blames Afghanistan for harboring terrorists that attack Pakistan, and we said Afghanistan was the axis of terrorism when in fact it was Pakistan. Yeah, that was harboring the likes of what do you call him? Him who was always supposed to be in a cave somewhere in Afghanistan. Osama bin Laden, living quite happily in a compound in Pakistan, supposedly, although we're not even sure that that's the truth. That whole thing wasn't a deep fake by the Americans. So it's like it's hard to discern, and then you've got Modi, who is hated by a vast proportion of his people for changing all the laws on employment and things like that. And then you've got him seem to be aligning himself with Israel.
Yeah.
And I think, to me, this is a case of Israel just casting around for powerful friends. It's just lining up. The one thing Israel doesn't want is anybody who is anywhere near Israel to have any power whatsoever. They want all the countries around them to be weak. Yeah. This is a fundamental necessity for Israel to dominate the region. And by branching out towards India, which is an up-and-coming global power, they're now roping India into their sphere of influence in the same way that they've roped America into their sphere of interest. So they've now got two powerful friends, which they can perhaps use against other people. In the case of India, maybe Pakistan, maybe someone else. Who knows who Netanyahu would like? Who would like India to attack? Yeah. But that's certainly always Israel's modus operandi. They line up people who are going to do their bidding in the way that America has and continues to do. So I'm not sure whether they're trying this now with this rising power that is India.
Also, though, power in the middle of BRICS.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you've got South Africa that are fundamentally opposed to Israel.
Yeah.
You've got, obviously, Russia and China that have
they're aiding Iran.
Bilaterals with Iran, but they've got certain agreements with Iran either way, whatever they actually come up classed as. And now we've got India aligning with Israel.
Yeah. I think there's certainly forces in the world that would like to see a wedge driven into BRICS to cause division and pry those arrangements apart. I think, whether that is all part of either the expansion of the Israeli-American symbiote, their sphere of influence that they would like to see. It might be part of that. But then again, I don't know if Modi's not going to be president forever, is he?
No.
He might get thrown out on his ear. So everything's always flexible. But yeah, that does seem at odds with the BRICS idea, and the alignments that are within BRICS don't match with India aligning with Israel. It's a step outside of that. Yeah. But maybe Jackie said, well, maybe India's trying to act a bit like Turkey.
Yeah.
Play all sides off.
I do see him as a bit of a I don't know what area you class India as being in. I suppose it's his own area, really, isn't it? But I do see him as being a Indian Erdogan. He does remind me. He does remind me of him a lot.
Yeah, very mercurial. Never quite know which side they're going to come down on, and mostly interest. I mean, Erdogan's interested in Erdogan, I think.
Yeah.
So I think that's insightful. Well, I don't know whether this supposed alignment will have any material effects.
No.
What would that alignment look like? Would that alignment look like a military alignment, an economic alignment, both, or just a general agreement not to do anything, just sit back and don't get involved? I don't know. It's the whole the hot mess. The world's a hot mess right now, and there are some people that seem to be going out of their way to deliberately
make it hotter and messier.
Yeah.
Or messier even.
I was trying to think of a term, but hotter and messier. Yeah, absolutely. I don't know. Okay. And we haven't even talked about the benighted United Kingdom, because we're up some Brown River somewhere, and it's the air's not very nice to breathe. So we're just another country that seems to be floundering. And riven with divisions, and riven with divisions where you can't see a right side. You can't. There is nowhere to cast your lot. There's nowhere to say, I can put I put my faith and I put my trust with these people because they embody that which I believe. I can't see that in anywhere that I could pick out of a policy from this party and a policy from that party and a policy from that and put it all together and say, well, that kind of represents my idea, but I'm not going to get that. Neither am I very keen on the idea of voting for parties that always seem to say one thing and then do completely the opposite or do nothing. Politics is a waste of fucking time as far as I can see, but it's just the way it is.
The illusion's breaking, and the further the illusion smashes, even though there are still people that think they know better, claim to be awake, and that as soon as you disagree with them, you're immediately a libtard or you're immediately a Democrat, and you're thinking, I'm not American or Canadian, for one. And two, they're all in it together. It's all of them.
Yeah.
We never needed the and it's not even getting or touching on the Epstein files again, but we never needed them to be released because all we needed to know is it's all of them.
Yeah. It's like looking at a bucket of vomit and picking out the potatoes or the carrots. It's a bucket of vomit. It's all vomit all the way down.
Yeah,
all the way down to the bottom. And it doesn't matter whether it's carrots, potatoes, peas, or something that you can't identify. It's or sweet corn for some reason. Even though
you've never eaten it.
You don't eat it. Yeah, that is bizarre. But yeah, it doesn't matter which bit you pick out or point to. It's all part of the general vomit. Yeah, all right. And on that, I'd like to leave that picture of a bucket of vomit in people's minds. If they think politics, think vomit. So, yeah.
It was the juxtaposition of the politicians and the bucket of vomit that is the final picture of today.
Exactly. Yeah. Happy days. All right. Okay. So I'm happy to draw a cloth over that bucket and call it a day.
Yeah, it's Friday evening now. We'll be back on Sunday at 1:50 with Lone Gunman Rides Again, and at 8 p.m. with Last Jacobites International. I'll be back at Tuesday at 9 p.m. with Gleam in the North. Ian will be back Wednesday at 7 p.m. with Smokem. And then Glenn will be back next Friday at 7:30 with more from the Man in Black. So take care. Keep your eyes and ears peeled because we are on the brink of something.
Yeah.
Avoid stepping in the bucket of vomit if you can. And we will see you soon.
We'll see you then. Yeah, see you
Good night.
soon. Good night.